My name is Kit, and this is my campervan, Willie. When I left my home in London at the age of 20, I moved to the Isle of Thanet on the southeast corner of England, where I lived for the next 2 decades. Now, having lived in the north of England for close to a decade, I've decided to head south once more to revisit some of my old haunts. Join me on my adventures. Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a brand new series of Kit's Van Life. If you're new around here, my name's Kit and this is my van, and I'm currently parked up in Westgate-on-Sea, which is in the on the Isle of Thanet. Thanet is the furthest southeast tip of the British Isles. I used to live here. I lived here for about 20 years. I left home in London, where I grew up, at about the age of 20 and moved to a friend's house in Cliftonville, which is just past Margate. And I stayed there for a bit, and then I got some work, first at the Dreamland cinema and then at the Theatre Royal Margate, and eventually I was ready to get my first flat. My first flat in Westgate-on-Sea was at Adrian Square, and it was in a charming, tall Victorian terraced house, and I had the penthouse apartment. I lived on the top 2 floors of the house. From Adrian Square I moved to Egbert Road, and I had a first floor flat with a balcony and a sea view if you leant over the balcony. From Egbert Road I moved to St Mildred's Road, which is actually the place where I parked up last night. So St Mildred's Road was my 3rd address in Westgate-on-Sea, and I lived in a ground floor flat with a garden and a conservatory. The garden was quite large, the conservatory was quite posh. For me, in those days, I was proud of my conservatory. I had a piano in it. And sometime after that, me, Genghis and Gherkin moved to the cottage, which was hidden away at the back of a house on Westgate Bay Avenue, just next to Adrian Square. In fact, the view from my bedroom window was of Adrian Square. Probably the most important area of Westgate is the shopping area, and I notice, having returned for the first time in perhaps 7 years, it hasn't changed that much at all. A couple of the shops are different. Angelo's, my beloved delicatessen that I used to frequent, that is no longer there, and the video store is no longer there. That's been replaced by Butcher's, I think, but a lot of the shops are still the same, and the shopping street is still pretty much the same. It's wintry at the moment, so it's not very exciting to look at. In the summer, it's bustling, and there are lots of shops with buckets and spades and beach paraphernalia. But during the winter months, it's set up for Christmas. There's lots of Christmas tat on sale, and it's just very nice. It's kind of lost in a time warp. It feels very 1950s, or certainly very vintagey. It feels like an old-fashioned English seaside village or town, and it's very pleasant. I used to frequent a shop that sold interesting knickknacks and paraphernalia, smelly things and picture frames and ornaments and all sorts of interesting stuff. I had to look around the shop, and the smell of it brought back all sorts of memories. It was very nostalgic, and then they started expecting me to buy something, so I escaped. And another one of the very important parts of Westgate for me is the CARLTON Cinema. The CARLTON Cinema is a very charming, quaint, unusual building. It looks kind of small from the front, but it's big when you get inside, a little bit like a TARDIS. It originally only had one screen, I think, and then they added a couple of extra ones, little ones. But the one big screen is still pretty much unchanged since the days that I lived here. And they were kind enough to allow me to have a little look round. It's got a very nice, cosy atmosphere. It feels very bijou and like an art house cinema. They've got all the typical old movie posters, which I particularly appreciate. And they were kind enough to allow me to go in and have a little look round. So I did. The last area of Westgate that I would really like to show you is the centre of the universe. One very strong memory I have at the centre of the universe is when my granddad came to visit. We didn't know at the time, but that was going to be his last visit from Israel. He came here, we had a lovely day, and we all came to the centre of the universe. My mum, my brother, myself and my granddad. And mum took a lovely picture of me, granddad and my brother Steve poking our heads up behind the wall at the centre of the universe. And it's one of my favourite family photos because it reminds me of a really happy day. So I attempted to recreate that photograph earlier this morning, and a dog walker came along and stared at me as if I was mad, and that was quite embarrassing. I didn't do it as well as I might have done because I was being watched. It's an area that will always feel like home. I didn't realise it until this journey, but as I entered Kent, a feeling washed over me of coming home. Bill Bryson said in one of his books that one of the things you can't ever do is go home. But I've come home, and it's made me realise that if it wasn't for financial considerations, I would move back here because I really love it here.
A little different than all the rest. I'm quite old-fashioned where I had sometimes played chess. And when I'm out, I'm looking for that vintage fling. But all complexions that I adore, so hard to find, these seem impossible to score. So I dream on to someday find that vintage love. I kept on looking, but everyone's such a bore. And out of a sudden, you came through the door. At the next table, your whiskey neat. The lights were dimmed as our eyes met and you saw me. And forevermore, I like to share that vintage dream.
So we are just approaching Margate now. It's all pretty run down and dreary looking. It suffers from the usual problem of seaside resorts during the winter months. It's off season and looking a little bit shit. However, Margate Beach is still very beachy, and everything is exactly as I left it. I think I might take us on a little swing round the roundabout. This is the Margate Roundabout. I'm going to use it as a way of showing you some of the sights. So just up ahead is Margate Station, ahead and on the left, and this is the way we came. You can see the sea. I can see some seagulls, you probably can't. Leaving the roundabout and heading towards Margate. As usual, there's sand blown across the pavement from the beach. We're just approaching Dreamland, that big tower at the top. That's where the projection room was for the cinema. It looks like it's all shut down now and not in use. And the Dreamland theme park is just behind this parade of shops. So the shops on the right are mainly arcades, the usual tacky shit that you get in any seaside town. And on the left, the beach. And we're going to head around the coast to the Turner Centre, which is a relatively new addition to Margate. I remember living here while it was being built, but before we get to the Turner Centre, you can see the pier with the lighthouse. I'm going to try and drive onto that. And at the entrance to the pier, that's where the Turner Centre is. You'll see it as we go round the corner. So, as we go round the bend, we've got Pete's Fish and Chip Shop on the right, which is considered to be some of the best fish and chips anywhere in the world. I'm going to go there later, I think. I might get some chips. And up here ahead, this modern building, this is the Turner Centre. And I'm going to pull in to the Turner Centre and then see if I can negotiate my way onto the pier, if it's even possible to drive onto the pier anymore. It looks a little bit tight. It's quite scary because, well, I can get onto it. Will I be able to get off it again? That's the question. As usual, it's a pay and display, but I'm going to stick with the van and hope that I can get away without having to pay. Ooh, there is a violent smell of raw sewage assaulting my nostrils. I had forgotten about this. This area is absolutely full of stench. Alright, so it's delivery traffic only beyond this point. That's a shame. I can't drive right to the pier, but I can park up here for a few moments and do some talking. So, I was interrupted in the middle of attempting to tell you something by a council worker who needed to get his van past, and I was blocking his route. So I've completely forgotten what I was about to tell you about, but now I'm going to attempt the difficult manoeuvre of a 3-point turn, which will probably end up being a 53-point turn, to try and get off this very narrow pier. Otherwise I'll be stuck forever, and you'll never see me again. Anyway, let's do some driving. This should be fun. I have no idea how I'm going to accomplish this. The first decision I made was that I was going to do it facing the sea rather than with my back to the sea, because I didn't fancy reversing off the pier into the ocean. So I've actually made it a little bit harder for myself, doing it a way that, oh, would you Adam and Eve it? I've only done it in 3 points. I did it properly, like a big boy. Well, I'm very impressed with myself. I have successfully negotiated my way off the Margate Pier, and I'm now heading back towards the Turner Centre, where I will get some additional B-roll before moving on. Hello, so I'm currently parked up at Margate Station because it has a convenient car park and I feel safe here.
But I don't know what to do, staring into the blue sky and just waiting for a sign. Someday are certain of what awaits them when it all...
So I think I'm done with Margate now and I'm going to head further along the coast to Cliftonville, but on my way, I'm going to stop off at the Margate Theatre Royal, which is the second oldest theatre in Britain, and I used to work there. I was a lighting designer there for over a year, and it has a lot of very fond and nostalgic memories, so that's where I'm heading next. Wow, I'm very excited. I'm a little bit breathless. I went with the intention of getting some exterior shots of the Theatre Royal Margate, some shots of the posters, whatever's running at the moment, and some building shots. But there were some people there, and not just any people, there was stage crew there. And that was a result for me because I don't deal very well with managerial or administrative type people in terms of asking permission to do things. But backstage crew, techies, they're my kind of people. So I walked in and got lots of shots. I'm sure they thought I was a nutter. I mean, I turned up with a greasy, unwashed face and breath smelling literally like a gorilla's bottom, and sweaty and dishevelled and wearing socks and sandals, which is never a good look. It's my theatre. I feel a certain amount of ownership of the place. I worked there for so long, it was my life. I had the keys to the place. I used to spend multiple nights there. I would spend 3 or 4 nights rigging lights all on my own through the night in the dark, and so it feels like my home. I feel completely entitled to walk around and do whatever I like, but I have to remember that other people don't necessarily agree with that view, and they had no idea who I was, so I was lucky to be allowed to do what I did, but I didn't want to push my luck. I do feel very happy though, and that was a delightful visit. It made my day.